Got it. Okay. Does everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay. So this requires a little bit of explanation. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to talk about increasing income in the context of both rapid rehousing and in your process of housing planning, because it can't be separated out from the two. And we are not unaware that rapid rehousing has a lot more pressure on them to increase income than any other. Certainly supportive housing has some pressure on them to increase income, but not as much as you guys. So we want to be aware of that. You think that's true? Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this. Okay. So we're going to talk about how you get to a plan, and the plan always includes increasing income. We're going to do some specific things on motivational techniques to increase income and connecting to resources to connect people to resources. And we're really looking for you guys to tell us what's working and what's not working, right? So I hear a lot in the communities of practice that we do, that employment programs are really hard to get people to go there, and it's harder to get them to stick there. Is that true? Okay, so we want to talk about that. We want to talk about what would work for you. We also want to talk about how you do the plan. We want to talk about a way to negotiate preferences around increasing income, and then we're going to wrap it up. So I'm Andrea White. I know most of you guys. I know everybody I can see, at least. And this is Liz Isaacs, also from Housing Innovations, and you probably met Liz before. So she's going to be backing us up, and she's going to be talking, and she can add some stuff to this.
Yes.
So
and I'm sorry, Andrea, mint chocolate chip, the most important thing.
Oh,
my favorite ice cream flavor. Yeah. I mean, forget all this housing and employment stuff.
Chocolate chip.
Ice cream people.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor? It's an idea to get you thinking about something you like, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You can say if you don't like ice cream, you can put it in the chat or not.
We got some
Just think
cookies and
about your
cream.
favorite flavor of ice cream.
No, I dare someone to list one that I don't like. I really like them all. So
I am the mother who took my kids for ice cream for dinner.
What a great idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds like a seasoned mother that I'd like to hang out with, because I've done that before.
Absolutely.
Black raspberry.
Cookies and cream, black raspberry.
We will be in person one day again, and maybe we will bring ice cream. We'll have to think about that. Good stuff.
That's the other thing that's come up in some of the other trainings, is it's really hard to do this virtually. I realize that. We also have some rum raisin and strawberry. We also have some people are reluctant to turn on their cameras and all of that stuff. If you want this, right, in person, say something. Pineapple and coconut, popcorn ice cream. Where are you, Cynthia?
Yeah, do we say something now, or should we go to the powers that be?
Either way, both ways.
I'm sick. That's why I have my camera off. I look terrible, but I want to go back to in person. I miss in-person meetings.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's true.
I feel like people interact more,
Me too.
a lot more, a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm very for like going back. I've been around for a while with Andrea for almost 6 years now. So
Yes, poor Manuela.
I'm way before the COVID era. So I was always in person meetings. So I hate this Zoom stuff. I really do.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
It's hard to relate, and I think you meet more people who, are doing the similar stuff. All right. So I get it.
Would your office, well, hello everyone. This is Kathy here. If it was in person, would it be held at the Housing Collective, or where are your offices?
Well, that's where's my office in
Mhm.
my apartment in New York, and it most definitely would not be held here.
And
So-
I'm in West Hartford, but the house isn't big enough.
We
So
would have
that's
to
a
go to
good
Hartford.
question.
Mm.
That's a good question. I mean, one of the things that I would suggest is we do one closer to Hartford and one closer to the southern part of the state.
Like
Because I
Stanford.
think driving, I mean, I think it's a big downside for people if they have to drive 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because I think this meeting definitely should have been held in person, because one of our major barriers, with rapid rehousing is trying to get them to increase their, their income. So in person, I think people are more engaging and more willing to bounce ideas and ask questions, that we possibly might not do on a Zoom setting.
Okay, all right. Well, we can definitely set that up. The
Oh,
other
yeah.
part of this is we will do a follow-up with you guys of case conferences. So if you have additional questions after this training, that's a good place to ask them. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay?
Okay, yeah.
But we can
Definitely.
definitely talk to them about doing some stuff in person.
Oh, yes. And then also, when we're doing the Zoom the Zoom training, another thing is we get distracted. Clients calling, phones ringing, people knocking on your door,
Yep.
So
Yep.
just a little.
No, I know that's true. I know that's true.
Mhm.
It's, somebody's got a deadline, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have
all
a
right,
question.
we heard you. Yep.
Are we voting for in-person or Zoom? Is this a vote?
No, people are just saying what they're interested in. I think that initially what they'll probably do, why, Nordia, what would be your vote?
No, I like Zoom.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. So Nordia, one of the things that they might do is some sort of a hybrid, where maybe one training, maybe we talked about maybe a training in both sides of the state, or maybe one in-person training that's in a central place and one Zoom training, so people would have a choice. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna
Why
say, I
do you-
just feel like because we're so like that you have I don't remember the other, because you have Fairfield County that's over in one section, and then where's
Yeah.
the other, isn't it like really far, like up by West Hartford, right?
Yep, yep,
I'm in Greater
Yeah.
Hartford,
Okay,
Yep.
so I'm just saying like that, I think you gotta think of also like, I'm just thinking of even from me being in Fairfield, just driving to Norwalk with traffic, can be ridiculous depending on the time. Like, so I hear what you're saying, but maybe do two different ones in this sense, like, or a hybrid thing where you have one up there and then maybe us down here would do the Zoom and then vice versa. I don't know. Cause I have, it's just with where everybody is in location.
That's
I kinda-
exactly right. That's exactly what we're thinking about. And it's a challenge. I mean, we tried to do stuff in the middle of the state, so everybody had an equal time, except for me, who has to leave at 5:30 in the morning in order to get there, because the traffic is snarls it up. So either I get there at 8 in the morning or I get there at noon. So yeah, no, I get that. So yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll offer both options probably. But we want to give people an opportunity to do some in person. Yeah, and I know Middletown is a schlep for you from,
Okay.
where are you, Stanford?
Sorry, I took the Honda. I knew you needed it. I would've-
We used to do some stuff in New Haven. That,
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, never mind. You only.
so,
Okay. All right. So we'll figure it out. Yeah, New Haven's not so bad. Okay. All right. Here we go. So we're going to talk a lot about the housing plan. And I know we're going to talk more about the housing plan next week, next month, but housing plan guides the work with the individual, and the income stuff has to be integrated into the housing plan. And it has to be a working document. In other words, the document is there when you're doing a home visit, when you're talking to people about what their income is. You're talking about and revising the housing plan every time you visit it. And it's developed through an ongoing assessment, client input, goals, discussions with the team, motivational techniques, and the work together. And the housing plan provides that structure. So I'm going to focus on that initially, and I'm going to bring in all of the income stuff. So do we have a poll, Liz? No? No, right? Okay. So how many people do a housing plan, and how often do you do it?
We
Put it
do,
in the chat or call it out. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
it's usually every 3 months. But
Okay.
but we can do it, like if it's, a lot of times I do it before they're housed, and then once they get housed, I'll redo it.
Yep.
And then go from there for like every 3 months, unless their goal changes before that.
So you do CTI. Because that's right out of the, okay.
Basically,
Okay.
yeah, even we started that, and then because I do both, I do the rapid rehousing and the Bridgeport Housing First program.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So
All right.
I tweak it with the rapid rehousing
Yeah, that
because it's
makes
not for the
sense.
9 months.
That's exactly what we're gonna do. So there was a CTI for rapid, and
I
it was
read them.
every 2 months. Go ahead. Sujay, tell me how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Did you want to say something? Okay.
Nope,
why I'm
sorry.
asking. Okay. So I'm going to mute you and just unmute when you want to talk. Okay, there you go. All right. So the reason I ask people that question is not because I'm trying to torment you. It's because the box that I see lights up, and I usually think that means people want to say something. All right. So let me tell you what I heard in a permanent supportive housing session one time. I was doing a thing on housing training, and people said, well, how are we supposed to do all that? And we only have 2 hours to make a plan. And I said, what do you mean you have 2 hours to make a plan? They said, well, we start the plan when the supervisor sends us a thing that says your plan is due today, and that's when we do it. All right. I'm here to say that's not the way to do it. Okay. You want to work the plan the whole time, especially on income. Does that make sense? Okay. Here we go. Let's talk about the planning process. We're going to engage people. We're going to do an assessment. We're going to do some goal development. We're going to use some motivational techniques, and then we're going to develop the plan. And this goes for all the things that are most critical for rapid rehousing. And those are housing, income, right? And resources. Okay. So we're going to engage the person the first time you meet the person. It begins with the first contact. So engagement sets the tone of what you're going to do, and you want to make it collaborative. We want people to tell us their story, what their concerns are, what they want. We want to ask them those things. I've actually suggested to some people that they not even bring in the form. Just have a conversation, let them tell you the story, and ask them some questions. How did you support yourself when you were in the shelter? How did you get the things you needed, right? We want to know what they're doing to generate some sort of income. And trust me, I ran a shelter for a long time. Everybody has a way to generate income, even if it's just, I worked my case manager until they gave me what I needed, right? Sometimes it's working a system, sometimes it's a pickup job, sometimes it's something, but we want to know about that. We want to evaluate people. We want to assess what they're telling us. We want to look at how they live. We want to look at how they interact with their surroundings. We want to seek information from HMIS, which has a lot of income information, and we want other providers that have worked with them. So part of this is that warm handoff from the shelters. We want to know about those things in those 3 critical areas, particularly for rapid rehousing: housing, income, and resources. Okay. We want to be reliable. We want to be supportive. We want to work on something together. We want to present housing as a solution, but housing requires income, and we want to be clear about that. We want to provide some comfort. We want to start with things that people are more comfortable with, and we want to work towards that. everybody is not in the first week going to commit to a plan that will give them enough income in order to be able to sustain themselves in Connecticut, right? So we want to think about that. We want to develop some trust. We want them to talk about their experiences. We want to set the tone. We want to transfer that engagement through warm handoffs. Is anybody here getting warm handoffs from shelters now? Nobody.
No, we got them through the can. Our matches are made.
Okay, does the can provide you with a warm handoff? Do they know anything about the person? Have they engaged with the person?
Sometimes if there's a shelter case manager.
Hey, David, you're breaking up. So you know what? I hate to
somebody
say it,
who's
but you may want to turn off your
working with
camera.
that client at the meeting.
Okay.
We could find out some more information, but if there's nobody there to represent at the CAN meeting that can advocate for the client, we might learn some things, but not generally.
Would it be more helpful if you got a warm handoff from the shelter or the outreach program they were working with?
Definitely.
Okay, we're pushing that. Sarah, you wanted to say something?
Usually like when we get, or at least when I get my referrals, they say who they're connected to, and then
Yeah.
I usually try to like reach out to that person just to get a little background before making the call to the client to introduce myself, just to make sure that they're kind of aware of what program they'll be getting and that kind of thing. That's how I've
That's good.
been doing it. And depending on if the client is in the shelter, I tend to have my first meeting in the shelter, like at the
Yep.
shelter. So it all
That
depends.
makes a lot of sense.
But I've gotten a couple of people recently who are street homeless, so they'll come to me, but I'll get like a little bit information from the outreach worker beforehand.
One of the things in a warm handoff is the outreach worker or the shelter worker participates in the meeting. And one of the benefits of that, is that happening? Sarah, is that happening?
If it depends, I know it's like, I guess for me, I could have asked them to come to the meeting, but I just kind of got my little kind of information and then did the same thing. So I think it depends.
Yeah. But if it was an expectation of the shelter or the outreach worker to give you a warm handoff, would that help?
I think so. I think it could, depending on the client.
Okay. Yeah, if the client hates the worker, it's not exactly a win-win situation.
Open Doors, we have warm handoffs for every single one of our clients, for both the shelter and outreach. That's
Great.
part of what we do.
That's great. And so that's really great. And
And the
that's
first
probably
meeting is with the shelter case manager and the rapid rehousing case manager and the client.
okay. And do you run the shelter?
Do I run the shelter?
No, not you
Oh.
personally, but does Open Door run the shelter?
Yes.
Okay. So that's an example of where people have put it in place within their own agency. And I think that's a great thing, but I'd like everybody to do that. That's a great example. Thanks, Frederick. Okay. As we're building the relationship, we want to know what people want. And you've seen that before. We're going to practice it again. We're going to explain the rapid rehousing program and how you can help. So let me give you a little advice about explaining the rapid rehousing program. If you say it's 6 months, everybody who comes into the program knows that people stay a year, right? Everybody, all the clients know, right? It's true. So let's tell them the truth, right? The goal of rapid rehousing is to get people through in 6 months. Because of what's happened recently, that it is possible to extend to a year, but it has to be somebody who's actively working on their plan. How's that different from what you're doing now? Are you comfortable with that? What do you tell people? Tell them 6 months?
I kind of go that I don't really say a month. I say it's a short-term financial assistance that
There
can
you go.
assist you, up until the main goal is for you to obtain the housing on your own. Like
Yep.
I kind of do it that way. I don't really give an actual month thing. Like I know in the back of my head, I could be working with you for up to, the year, but I kind of, the way that I present it to the client, I don't actually say, oh, you're only in here for 6 months, I just kind of do it that way. And then I also say what the whole goal of the program is for you to be able to sustain this on your own without us.
Absolutely. All right, that's good. I just don't want people telling people something they know is false, right?
It's really hard though, if I can say that, because a lot
Yeah.
of clients coming from shelters, initially coming into the program, they're under a misinterpretation that the program is automatically 12 months. Like, for example, I had a client that was recently intaked and she's like, well, at the shelter, they told me that my rent would be paid for 12 months. And it's like, well, we're not just going to pay your rent for 12 months and then you just kind of, lollygag for 12 months until further notice. It's not exactly how it works. So it's kind of hard when one place is saying something to them and then kind of trying to like reiterate what the program is and like breaking it down for them, because it's just a lot of misinterpretation. And to be honest, like I feel like a lot of letdown and you seem like the bad guy delivering the message to them. It's like, oh, sorry, but this is how it goes.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what you can say. You can say it's a short-term program. And when people come in with a number, you may have to offer a number. What is really the rapid rehousing program? It's really 6 months, right? But that people have been extended up to 12 months. But when do people get extended? People get extended when they're in trouble. People get extended when they're not moving. People get extended when they don't have enough income. Why do people get extended?
The new guidelines say 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah, for 12 months, then they have to get extended after 12 months.
Okay, but
Yes.
do you have to give everybody 12 months?
Well, if they don't follow the guidelines, like responding to us, working with us once a month, allowing us entry into their unit once a month, those are things that would disqualify them from continuing to move forward with rapid rehousing.
Yeah,
Hey,
and I
Kathy,
also,
but-
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna also say too that, the clients we get come in with a lot of different challenges, and some of them it's not wanting to work, but trying to, how can I explain it? There's mental health issues, there's addiction problems that you're dealing with. So realistically, like it took me like almost 6 months to have a client even trust me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
So, I kind of say, like a year we ask for that extension. And sometimes it's not that the person doesn't want to help, but they don't know. They're young. There's just a whole ream of reasons where it takes us a while to get to those or even begin to get to those goals.
Okay. Okay, but Liz, is it reasonable that there'll be a plan in place at 6 months?
There's always a plan because I do a housing plan every 6 months, every 3 months, and I touch base with them. And sometimes it is, they have a job, they're working, they lose the job.
Okay, I understand. There are barriers and that sort of stuff. So what's the argument? Do you want to tell people it's a year? What do you want to tell people?
For me, I think it's hard to go and tell, people who don't have income, haven't had a stable job in the past 10 to 15 years, possibly, learning disabilities, and just a lot of background, a lot of barriers to their background. So it's hard to tell them, hey, you have 6 months of assistance. Other than that, after that, you and your children are on your own. So at least with a year.
I'm not suggesting you're saying 6 months of assistance, but I am suggesting you say that what Sarah said, this is a short-term program?
Yes, so that's what I
Okay.
tell them. I tell them it's a short-term program, short-term rental assistance program. It's for a year. You know, after 6 months, I'm to reevaluate you and see, you know, if we've met our goals, what's your progress, to see, you know, how successful you're going to be before you're discharged from the program at 12 months.
We've got to see this is going to work, right?
Yeah.
Nordia. Go ahead.
I think there's a lot of factors that plays into this, because then technically you should be taking like up to 45 days to house the clients, but with the barriers that they're coming with, it kind of takes a while, right? So having those conversations with clients in terms of, you know, the barriers, we probably will say the program is technically up to a year. We say up to. But because of the time frame sometimes that it takes to get you housed and, you know, other things that come to the program, it could be shorter than that. So we have had those conversations because we want people to be aware of some of the factors that play into it, that they may not get all of this funding, because technically they're really not getting all of this help for a year.
Okay, but let's think about that. It's up to 12 months of assistance. So why would that 45 days it takes to get somebody housed count towards that? It's the subsidy that's 12 months. You can actually continue case management for another 6 months without the subsidy. So why does the first 45 days count?
So you're saying that after 12 months, we can continue working with clients?
Yes.
Oh, that was
But
never
not-
on.
No, but she's saying no assistance after the 12 months.
Right. There's
She's
no
saying you
financial
can have some
assistance.
case management, like you can do follow-up
right.
or stuff like that after it. But also, if you are working with the housing piece, you're not really starting the financial piece until after they're housed, or at least that's what I know we
Right.
do. So so if it takes like 45 days, if it takes 60 days, if it takes however long it does, you're still I still go off the CTI model where they're still in pre-CTI, so they don't really are starting with the financial piece until they get housed.
And that's
But
what
it
Connecticut
starts with
said.
the
It's
case
the
management.
financial. What?
So we
Say it
start
again.
the case management from them from the first time they
Yes.
went into the program.
And I want to acknowledge that. So it depends on where your money comes from. If your money comes from ESG, you can
Right.
provide 6 months. You can provide 6 months of case management before people are housed. If it's coming from straight continuum of care, there is nothing that provides that. So you got to figure out how to provide that case management, right? You can still provide 6 months afterwards, but you can't provide the pre-CTI. So it
Right.
sounds like your funding source is not ESG. Everybody know what that is? Emergency Services Grant?
That's what I was trying to get at. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So that okay. But technically what they're saying is a year of financial assistance. So we can figure out the other part, but I think it's a year of financial assistance. Okay. Okay. So when we do an assessment, you guys don't have a set assessment form. You use your assessment form for your agency, right? So everybody's assessment form is different. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So you also realize that, of course you realize, is that you don't get all the information ahead of time, right? Is that a lot of times people will trust you and they will, that was Liz's point, as they begin to trust you, they'll give you more information. And you need that information to make a really good plan, right? So we said, think every 2 months, and assessments are developed through observation, conversation, and consultation. I'm going to show you a CTI assessment plan, and you tell me if that is available. Here we go. If that is something that you guys have this information. Okay. Here we go. Guess I'm not. I'm looking for it. Sorry, I should have pulled it up. All right, you know what?
Do you want me to share my screen, Andrea?
Do you have the assessment?
Yep.
Yep. Let me just stop sharing. Liz is going to pull up the assessment.
Oops, sorry. Try again. Too much open. There we go. Can you see that?
Okay, so we're going to go down. Have you guys seen this before? Yes. I know you're not going to use it. So scroll down a little bit, Liz.
No, I haven't
see-
seen this one.
All right. This is a CTI assessment.
Is this a new
And-
one?
Nope. You've seen it, Manuela.
Not this particular one.
Stop. Go up to the employment history.
Sorry. I can put it in the chat after.
Okay. We'll make sure you have it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're still going up.
Yeah. Okay. So you see this? The first thing they ask is employment history. You want to know any kind of employment that people have had. You want to know what their employment goals are. What do they want in terms of employment? You want to know what services they're currently getting. You want to know services needed to access or maintain employment from their perspective. And then you want to know what their motivation is to obtain employment. And usually that motivation, we're going to talk a lot about motivation, but usually that motivation is based on money, right? So do people know they need employment? And then there's an income and benefits section. So it just goes through, right? So you do it. And then you want to do, if there's a task, can you please send a link for the assessment? Thank you. Okay. Yes, Liz. Okay, that's Liz. Liz. I'm thinking, why is Liz Isaac saying that when she's showing the thing? Okay. Non-cash benefits. So this is the income section. Do you think integrating this into your current employment program plan would be helpful to you? Have this information? Do you ask these
Well,
questions?
we do this at the intake. We
Okay.
gather all of this information at the intake.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing we don't do in detail at the intake is get employment history. So that might be, that part would be
Okay.
helpful.
I was gonna say, like, some of it might be good to like tweak, like some of it would be good to like have,
Yeah.
maybe not do everything because we do it in other parts
Yeah,
of our stuff,
That's fine.
but I think it could be beneficial in some other ways.
Mhm.
Okay. Hey, Sue. Does New Reach use this form?
We use something similar, but not exactly that form.
Yeah.
We've,
So I think that's what
managed to
Manuela was
tweak
talking
it.
about.
Yeah, we managed to tweak it like for agency purpose kind of thing,
Yep.
but it's almost the same thing.
Okay. So Sue might be a resource, right? Because they did take this form and tweak it. So you may want to look at her form. Does that make sense? Right? Because we've got to get an assessment. We got to know where people are. Okay.
Would this be like, almost equal to the barriers to housing form? I mean, this one is way more detailed, so I really like this one. But if we're, sorry.
Liz, go down to the end of this form. It's
Oh my
actually a pretty,
gosh, this is a
right.
long form.
So is this what you're talking about, a barriers form?
No, they gave us a barriers to, the housing collective had, emailed us a barriers to housing form, which it, just basically gives you different categories to check off. Anything that, different topics that stops them from, getting housing.
Mhm.
Or
I like
slows
Okay.
them.
Yeah, I like this because she's right, the barrier form that Kathy's speaking is it's very limited. And this prompts you to ask questions that you may just not think to ask. Actually, I would like to do this during the intake.
Me too. Yeah, I like this one. I do.
Yeah, definitely do this during the intake. I think that would right off give us much more information. And
Mhm.
because like we have a notes section in our intake part, and that's where I'm asking about, okay, where are you? If you don't have your birth certificate, what's the barrier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you just like much more information. Because they do ask about the legal issues, but then as you're going through the intake towards the end, you're like, oh, I'm on parole. Well, that's important to know,
Yes. And this
Uh,
asks all those questions. So you may want to look
Exactly.
at this
So this
form,
is this is
This is
right? It
great.
talks about legal
for
issues. It
assessment?
talks
This-
about owing money. Kathy, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. My coworker, sorry.
Okay. So we got a question from Elizabeth King that says, would this form be applicable for both adult rapid rehousing and YHPD? Yes, it would be, except for you may want to add some things because young adults need skills for adulthood. And there's a couple of patterns that people want to see. So I would add getting your driver's license to this form. For younger people, I would add that sort of thing. So you may have to tweak it. And then Yolanda says, my rapid rehousing reentry program does not require us to use the CTI form. No, it's not required. I mean, we wrote this form. This is not a CTI form. Our HMIS intake is similar, but would like review. Could you please send me the link? Yes, we will. Liz will put the link right in the chat and you can just download it.
So I just want to say that this particular form that we're seeing here, a lot of this is part of the intake. When we do our intakes with our clients, it's just the information is so spread out. Because we do have like a barriers page, and that barriers page focuses on like any like credit issues or any criminal background, but that's separate. Then you have another form where it asks you about the income, and then so everything is sort of, everything that's being asked here is sort of part of the intake, but the way the intake is set up, the way like DOH has their packet and stuff like that, everything's just spread out. So I mean, my suggestion would be for everyone that likes it is that if your agency allows you to substitute some of your forms and then just replacing those forms with this particular one, instead of going back and forth from the actual DOH intake packet, then you got a separate barrier form and educational form separately, then maybe that could be an option.
Yeah, because income is so important to people being able to succeed in rapid rehousing that we really do need to separate this out. And it does put everything in the, yeah. So debts are in here, legal services are in here, it's all in here. Okay, thanks, Liz. Liz is going to put it in the chat for you. Oh boy.
And you said when we get it, we can tweak it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect.
This is not a requirement that you use it as is. When I used to provide services, there was nothing I provided as is. Nothing. Okay. The other part is housing history. You want to know when these all apply to income, places where people have lived. Were they a leaseholder? If they were a leaseholder, they had obligations, and financial obligations are part of that. How did the person get goods and services? How did they meet their needs? What were the roles and responsibilities? We're going to take something from this in terms of jobs. What worked? What didn't? What caused the initial episode of homelessness? Usually it's some sort of financial crisis. The length of time homeless. How long were they homeless? How long how did people get resources they needed? Where did they stay? Routine support. So we're integrating the income thing into the whole assessment, into the whole plan, right? If we do it separately, people pay less attention to it. So what I want to do is break people up into groups, and we're going to talk about what kind of income and housing, homeless histories are you seeing? How did people generate income in the past? If it was illegal, that's fine. We can work with that, right? We're not going to make people into really good, whatever the legal activity they were doing, but we're going to use those skills to help people get some confidence for other types of jobs. What kind of roles do people have when they were homeless? That's going to give us a clue, right? How is housing and rapid rehousing success connected to the person's personal goals? Okay. So I want you to take 10 minutes, have a discussion about this. Liz is going to break you up into groups, and I am going to share this. Uh-oh. Hey, Liz. All right, let me try it another way. Wait a minute. I'm going to share this. Liz is, oh, I see. I can't do it until you break people up into groups. Okay.
Yeah, people should be getting a notice.
I'm not getting, there it is. All right, there we go. All right, here we go. Then you want to stop the recording. So what did you guys hear about people's histories?
I have a client that does petty theft when he wants something.
Okay. And how successful is he at that?
Terrible.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so that's something to remember is homeless shelters don't usually have a lot of really successful criminals. And what happens when he gets caught a lot? Is that what happens?
He's in jail.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay. So, he tries to get his needs met through petty theft, and then, okay. So is there anything he's good at there? No. Okay.
Pounding
Okay.
the system.
Okay.
That takes a
All right.
skill.
All right.
Oh,
All right. So,
He's good at apologizing.
okay. Okay. So he's working the system, right? Does he get long jail terms?
I've been with him since November, and I think this is his third time in jail. But
Okay.
he says he's been going in and out of jail basically his whole life, and they know him. Probation knows him. The judges know him, so they just let him sit for a little while, and they let him back out until he comes back.
Okay. Well, is that working for him? Does he like that?
He tells me he doesn't. He tells me he wants, every time I see him, he said he's not going back to jail anymore. He know he messed up. He shouldn't have drank. He shouldn't have did this. And then he's good for like a month, maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and then like that.
Okay. But it's a system that he's familiar with, right? The judges all know him, probation knows him, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay, so what if we introduce another system? What's another system he might be able to work?
Working. I've heard when he does work, when he was working, he works. He goes to work, and he just has his. This year's like his bad year, but like last year, I heard he was working very steadily while he was in.
And what was he doing?
Warehouse jobs.
Okay. Did he like it?
Yes.
He did like it.
And then he was going to go back to school to get his trucking license.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
And
that he's got some stuff he wants, right?
yes.
Okay. So that's a positive thing. You've just identified the motivation for him. He has some skills. He has something that he likes. So ask him what would help him maintain that job. What happens to him in that job? Because it sounds like he loses the job after a while, right?
Yeah, he knows exactly what happens to him. He said he hangs around with the wrong people. He knows exactly. But he said he just ends up there. He doesn't know why.
Well, it's clearly something appeals to him about the wrong people, right? And that, people want a chance to relax. And so, maybe he could take a vacation from his job. Maybe he could do different things. You want to talk to him about how he uses the skills that he already has to maintain that job, right? What did he like about the job? What was important about the job? Money is a mood changer. So it might be money, right? But it might also be role. It might also be other things. And we work with those things. Sounds like alcohol's getting in his way a little bit. When he hangs out with the wrong type of friends, he drinks.
Yes.
And then he gets arrested.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I had a guy who I worked with who used to smoke crack, and he was very psychotic, and medication really wasn't working really well for him. And it was tamping down the psychosis, but it wasn't doing anything. And he'd smoke crack and he'd get in a fight immediately and he'd end up in jail or in the hospital. And he'd scream his head off, I hate being here, get me out of here, blah, 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 blah. So I'd say, okay. So I talked to him a little bit. And at first I thought he must like the hospital, right? Do you like the hospital? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, no, I don't like the hospital. I hate the hospital. These are the reasons I hate the hospital. I said, okay, but what's getting you in the hospital every time? And he said, I don't know. I was just hanging out with my friends. And I said, well, okay, what does that do for you? And he looked at me and he said, you know what? When I'm with my friends, I feel normal. When we're all smoking crack, we're all crazy and we all I feel normal. And it's the only time when I feel normal, because usually I'm really different than other people because I hear these voices. And I thought, okay, so what can we figure out where he feels normal, where he doesn't end up in the hospital, and maybe he doesn't smoke crack, right? And I mean, I won't pretend like it was a miracle. He didn't completely stop smoking crack, but you know what? He was able to consider other options. So we got to figure out what it's doing for him to hang out with his friends or the bad people who get him in trouble. What does it do for him? And see if we can replace it somehow. Sometimes people feel normal. Sometimes people feel part of a group, right? But in order to maintain a job, you have to have something that you're getting out of it, right? So it's a good conversation. It sounds like you've had a lot of these conversations. Manuela, you want to say something? You just lit up. Okay.
No.
I just wanted to ask, what was an example, or if you can give us an example of, someone that has substance abuse, such as, the guy you're talking about that was on crack. Is there what type of tools or verbiage or, direction that we would take in order for us to address their substance abuse? Because, it's hard. You can't tell them, hey, you need to check your substance abuse. You can suggest, but to force or to, threaten or anything like that, we can't do. So if you could just give me, or us a example of how to redirect someone's substance abuse to focusing on housing.
So one of the things that we want to do is keep raising the comparison, right? And we're going to talk through this. We're going to do actually a harm reduction plan on this. So one of the things that we want to do is keep reinforcing what they get out of this. People wouldn't use substances unless on some level it worked for them. It may not be something that we think works, but it works for them. And we got to know how it works for them, right? So that we're going to ask those questions. The other thing is expectations. Rapid rehousing is not designed to cure substance abuse. We can plant the seeds. We can help people be more functional, but we're not going to end substance abuse, right? That's something that they're going to pick up. So the best we can hope for is plant seeds and also help people function through it. We always want to offer treatment, and once in a while somebody will accept treatment. But you know what? Most people won't. And then if the criteria for graduating from rapid rehousing is that the people aren't using substances, then 1 year is not enough, right? And you're not correctly staffed to do this, right? It goes to expectations, and it also goes to that. If we can find a way for people to be functioning. So let me give you an example. We had a guy who got a job at a front desk of a building. It happened to be one of our buildings, right? And his shift was scheduled from 8 to 12. And he was late every day, right? Because every night he went out with his friends and he got high, right? And he was pretty clear, but he couldn't do it. So what we did was we changed his hours. So his hours were from 4 to 7. And you know what? He could show up. It also delayed him getting high with his friends, but it generated money. So it was a negotiation. He also, for the first time, experienced not being high, right? He got a period of abstinence, and then we could work with the abstinence. Sometimes the best we can hope for is to extend periods of abstinence. I'm not against treatment. I'm a big fan of treatment. But getting people into treatment is complicated. We need to have the resources. We need to be able to get treatment on demand. And we need to be able to talk to people about how to negotiate increased functioning, right? Dwight's guy gave him something really good, which is that he wants to be a trucker. And I know they drug and alcohol test truckers because they don't want people on the road who are high, right? So maybe the positives and negatives of becoming a trucker might be a good thing for him to do. So he realizes what he's got to do, right? We're building a plan to help people be more functioning and focus on housing. So Kathy, does that answer any of the questions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Other things that are coming up for people. By the way, as a follow-up to the last meeting, we actually had a case conference on alcohol for the PATH programs, and we did that session on substance use disorders for them. And we had somebody from Demas who has a specialty in substance use disorders, and she gave us a bunch of resources. So we're in the process of putting them in a sheet, because I know none of you guys ever go back to the PowerPoint. Is that right? Nobody does. I don't either. So we're going to give you a sheet with all those resources on it. And one of the resources that was particularly powerful is there's a central listing of withdrawal management beds, which is what they're calling detox now. They're only medical detox beds for people with alcohol, fentanyl, heroin, those sorts of things that require medical supervision. There's a state listing, and you can find out where people can get in. You can find out where there's a spare bed, and there usually are spare beds. It just may not be in your area. They will also provide transportation. Would that be helpful to have a listing like that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, we'll get it for you. We're working on it. We need to just make sure all the links are live and that they give you guys the information you want. And we should get that done probably this week. Okay, I got some questions in the chat. Oh, yeps. Okay, all right. So the other thing we want to do is contextualize increasing income. And how we do that is we talk about, if people's goal is housing, what are the expectations of the lease? allow other tenants peaceful enjoyment of their homes. So Kathy, we're going to negotiate peaceful enjoyment with people that are getting high in their homes, right? And how do they prevent that? And we're going to ask questions like, why are people objecting to this? Because they're afraid of your visitors, right? How can we modify this behavior? Doesn't mean they have to stop using, but it does mean they may have to stop using in their apartment, right? We're also going to focus on the things in obligations of the lease that are focused on income, right? They're going to have to pay rent. How much is rent, right? We're going to allow people, we're going to, keep you utilities, right? Some people want a subsidy. Okay, even if you get a subsidy, you still have to pay a percentage of your income for rent, and you have to keep your utilities done. You may get a utilities allowance, but you know what? That's for a energy conserving household. Y'all working with any energy conserving households? Me neither. Usually their utilities is way above what the utility allowance is. So how are we going to do that, right? So we're going to talk about what are the obligations of the lease, and we're going to talk about how people are going to meet them, all of them. But we're going to tie in the income related ones, right, to how people maintain housing. That's their goal, is housing, how they're going to maintain housing, and how they're going to keep up with these things. We're also going to, I never show obligations without rights. So we're going to talk about rights, but we also want people to identify what's the benefit and what's the difference between where they lived before, which might have been in the streets, might have been in the shelter, and housing. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And we're going to work on that to decrease the disadvantages of housing and increase the advantages of housing. We're going to have these conversations. Is this making sense? Right? Okay. We're going to know the resources. Okay. Saga Cash, food stamps, Husky, TANF. What are the eligibility? I'm not going to go through it because you guys eyes will roll back in your heads. But there is a link here to Connecticut Law Help, which talks about the benefits and who's eligible and what you have to do to get them. It also talks about the appeals process, and it talks about the timelines. So you want to know as much as possible about benefits, but you don't have to be benefits experts, right? We want to be able to hook people up with an advocate. All right, I am not a big fan of giving case managers 95 jobs, right? You want to know the basics, you want to be able to explain it, and you want to hook people up with what these resources are. How about SSI, SSDI, Social Security? There's a link there to the Social Security information. Yeah, Yolanda. You
No,
just had your hand.
no, that was a clap when you said, I'm not,
good.
I don't want to give case managers 95 jobs. I was like, yes.
It's really hard. If you have to be an expert on everything, it's impossible. So that's why all of these things had advocates attached to them. Okay. This is the basic Social Security information. So you want to know it. There is also the SOAR program, right? Have people used SOAR? All right, let me tell you a little bit about the realities of SOAR, okay? To fully complete an application in SOAR, right? It takes 24 hours, 24 hours of staff time. That's most of a week, right? And it's not done over a week. So there's a limited amount of people that they can accept. They also do a SOAR training online, and they will help you do certain things like they'll help you write a functional assessment. There are things that you can do by taking the SOAR training to speed up the process. They are adding SOAR people to Connecticut. And if you can get people in, I would try it. But you should also know the basic rules of Social Security and who can advocate for people. There's also lawyers that'll help people appeal the process. They will take a percentage of their back income, but they will do that. So you want to know about that. You also want to know about rep payee. Does everybody know about rep payee? Okay, so we need to come to an agreement. You can do involuntary rep payee by getting a doctor to write a letter that they're incapable of handling their income, or you can do voluntary rep payee. But you got to find a place that'll do rep payee. How many of your programs do rep payee? Any of them? No.
Our agency here actually does that, but I believe the executive director is going to be moving away from that because
I'll tell you,
it's a lot.
it's a lot and it's a
Mhm.
pain. And if you're an agency that does it, you have to be bonded, you have to do all of these things, and it doesn't cover it. And most agencies don't charge the clients.
Yes, we don't charge.
Right. But some rep payee agencies do.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody needs a rep payee, they need a rep payee.
I have a client that his rent, he makes $1,200 a month. You know, he's always working. But unfortunately, thank goodness he was in rapid rehousing. But for some reason, something always ended up ending his job. Not at his fault, but because of the company. Nothing that he did wrong. But, you know, because he was getting income and it was shortly ended, you know, or suddenly ended, he wouldn't have money to pay because he's spending his money on partying and paying for everybody on the block to enjoy their lifestyle. When it comes to banking, this is a man who is 57 years old. He's never held a job prior to him coming here because he worked privately for a family for years. But when it comes to banking, he does not want to save his money. He doesn't want to work with our FOC because he doesn't trust the system. His saving method is putting it under his mattress. But that's not efficient. So I feel like a lot of times we're getting rapid rehousing clients that have substance abuse as well, dual diagnosis, substance abuse as well as mental disorders. And I think to me, the mental disorder is the hardest part to work with because sometimes they're not diagnosed and they're not willing to see a therapist, or they are diagnosed and it's not enough for them to receive Social Security. You know, there's a lot of barriers to that as well.
Okay. So let's take that as an example, right? So Kathy, how often does he get paid?
Biweekly.
Okay. You may want to negotiate for a landlord to accept the rent biweekly.
Yeah, we tried that because then he ended up having arrears and that didn't work. Because when they want to get, you know, back into their normal state, they really can't control that. You know, they just go back and spend that money, and who wants to get high alone? You know?
No, I know.
So the whole block loves him. But we did try that. And then I had to end up referring him to person because rapid rehousing, we can't backdate anything. So I had to refer him to person for assistance. So in that, he ended up learning like, hey, I cannot pay my rent, but I'll still get assistance because right now I'm going to discharge him and he's perfectly fine with him being discharged.
Okay. So there's a couple of things, right? It's not just he was having trouble with the banking system, and if he could pay his rent biweekly, that wasn't helping him, right? Which is great. You tried that. But the other problem is the call of the getting high was too strong, right?
Too strong. I like that. Yes.
He wasn't prioritizing housing, right? And we can make that easier for people by, you know, making the rent due when they get paid, that sort of thing. But if that doesn't work, then it's the real problem. And one of the things that I would do is go back and help him to prioritize housing, right? Ask him the questions. What's the difference between where he lived before and where he's living now? What does he like about the housing? What's important to him, right? We want people to have equity in the housing or they're not going to prioritize rent. So it's going back to have that conversation. The other part of this is that, you know, he doesn't have any problems with being discharged because he thinks he can just go to person and get all the back rent, right?
Well, that was my assumption.
Okay.
That's just my assessment. Like, I feel like that's what that taught him, instead of him saying, you know what, I need to make sure I pay my rent all the time. Because he still has been late since. Yeah, that's just my assessment. But I don't really know
He's
if that's
been
how he
late,
really
but
thinks.
he's been late, but he's been able to pay it.
Yeah, but he does pay. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that might be as good as it gets, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That's okay. That might be as good as it gets. The landlords are pretty happy when they pay their rent. I would go through when the landlord's going to start proceedings against him and make sure that he knows that he has like a month to pay his rent, or that there's going to be late fees or other stuff. I would go through what the consequences are, but it sounds like he's going to pay his rent, and he has, and he's shown you that.
Yep, absolutely.
Does this make sense to people? This is not a perfect system, right? I want to talk a little bit about veterans benefits. Does people know much about veterans benefits? All right. So this is a link to what people have, but there's basic income benefits from the Veterans Administration. That includes something called a veterans pension. It's about $1,100 to $1,200 a month. And that people either have to have a disability or they have to be over 65 years old to get the veterans pension. It is, people can't have, if they have income, that will be deducted from their veterans pension, right? But the people are eligible for this pension. The other part of the eligibility is you have to be eligible for VA services, and you have to have served at least 1 day during a wartime. And on the on the VA website, it tells you when the war times are, but the conflict in Iraq, the conflict in Iran, obviously Vietnam, Korea, if they did, they don't have to serve in a war zone. They just have to serve during a war time. And that's a huge benefit. And it's a lot more than SSI. And if you have people who might be eligible for veterans pensions, I would go to your local, once again, I'm not saying that you have to do everything. Go to your local veteran agencies and ask them to help them apply. A lot of these places do have that. You can actually talk to people in SSVF, which is supportive services for veteran families, also singles. They might be able to help you with that. Or you can go to the VBA. The VBA is the Veterans Benefits Administration, and find out if the person is eligible. And they'll tell you what they have to do, but it's also on these websites. So people been using this veterans pension? No? Did you know about it? I know we've been working with the VA for about 10 years. And the first 2 years, I was a supportive housing provider, and I never knew about the veterans pension, and I was mad. But you know what? It's a great resource. Another resource is what you hear about, which is a service-connected disability, is they were injured while in the service. And it can be 10%, which is about $250, up to 100%, which is almost $3,000. And if people get a partial service-connected disability, they may also be eligible for the pension. So you want to think about that, and the VBA can help you with that, as well as veteran service organizations. They also get medical care, which can include community services. They get housing, they get transitional subsidies. The VA has a program called the VA Supportive Housing, right? So if you have somebody who's eligible for the VA medical services, and that they don't, in other words, they don't have a dishonorable discharge, but even if they do have a dishonorable discharge, then they're eligible for the transitional programs through the VA, including the VA's rapid rehousing program called SSVF, and their transitional programs called GPD, and a little known program called contract services, where they contract for shelter beds up to 90 days. So they're eligible for all of that. Is that helpful? So you want to find out about that. So, you know, sometimes people come in and they say, I get money from the VA. Ask them how much. You can sort of figure out what they're getting by the amount of money they're getting.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that's, I know one individual that actually,
Okay.
he's a veteran. They helped him get housing and he decided to go back to school. And because he went back to school, I think they give him like an extra $2,400 a month or something like that.
Yep.
So every month he's getting like $3,700 in total. So, you know,
So
the
those
VA
school
is a great
benefits-
resource.
It's a great, those school benefits include room and board money, which is at 2,400,
Yep,
plus
yep.
books, plus other stuff. So that's a lot of money. Is that
A
something
lot.
people want to pursue? Okay. If people have questions about that, your local veteran services organization, right, can really help do that. They have advocates there. Once again, we're not adding to your workload. We want you to make the connection and help people do it. They can also appeal people's discharges. So they may eventually, if they have a dishonorable discharge and it's attached to something, they can appeal the discharge. It takes a while. So they may be eligible for HUD-VASH, which provides a subsidy and case management. So it's something to consider. So these are the resources that you can do, and these will have advocacy links. Liz, you also said you had somebody who they could contact. Is that in DSS? Their email?
No, that was BRS.
Oh, BRS. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. If you use your post 9/11 school benefits, you get BAH, yep, which is based on where they live. So that's the allotment. If you have if people have served post 9/11, they also may be eligible for, and this is big for families, is you can transfer your school benefits to your child or your wife, which is huge, right? So they actually pay for tuition, room and board. They pay for the whole lot. Okay. All right. So we're going to work on these goal-based strategies. We're going to work on people's own experiences. We've done that sort of thing. We're going to use goal setting. We're going to empathize about unmet goals. It's tough to want to be a trucker and not be able to get there, right? We want to also look at other things that they could do that would get them similar gains. But we also want to confront the reason that they can't be a trucker, right? Which is they can't pass a drug test. Though they might be able to. You're going to list and discuss their strengths. The thing that motivates people most is a feeling of confidence and a feeling of competence. And when we're doing goal setting, we want to look at that. We also want to ask them what their life would look like. And we're going to talk about the things that they've been able to accomplish. And that homeless crisis oftentimes means that people can barely think past today. So they may be small goals, but we want people to dream a little bit. The other thing, how many people do budgets with people? You all do, right? How do people like those?
I do it every month with my clients that have, especially the ones that are working, that their income changes. They like it. They really like it.
They like it? How come they like it, Manuela? Most people jump out of the room when people mention budgets.
Because it shows them what they're spending on, and it shows them, gives them like a sense of control of like their money. You know, I don't know. I feel like most of my clients like it, and I work with young adults now.
But I also want to give you some credit. It also means that you're not, most people see budgeting as a process where the case manager snatches up their money.
Right.
But you don't do that. And if
No.
people want to get their nails done or they want to have a drink once in a while, that's not something you're going to eliminate from their budget, right?
No, you taught me that like years ago. I don't know how you worded it, but and I don't want to word it the wrong way, but you said
No, go ahead.
something but you said something in the lines of like, I don't care like what you spend your money on. Like, I just want to like if you're gonna buy your drink or smoke your pot, or I don't know how you worded it, but you said something like that. Like, I just want to make sure that your rent gets paid and that you
That's
have
right.
utilities. And I
That's
don't
right.
care what the rest of you spend your money on. I'm just here to make sure that you're paying your rent and you got your utilities on.
And you
And
can
that's why
keep
I'm
your
helping you
housing.
budget.
That's right. You can
You
keep
said
your
that like
housing.
years ago, but like I said, I don't know how you worded it, so don't take the wrong way, but it was
No,
something
that's
in those
great.
lines.
That's exactly right. So that we're going to focus on the things that are important,
Right.
right? And the people are going to do what they're going to do. And if they have to hide it from us or that sort of stuff, but budgeting can also show people how much they're spending.
Definitely.
The other way I get to that is ask people how much money they need in order to maintain their housing. And you know what they usually say? $100,000. You say, okay, now we have a long-term goal. What would you do with $100,000? What, how would you spend it? What's
Right
important to
now?
you? You guys are all thinking about having it, right? What, Maggie?
Housing first. I think, but for me, budgeting, it's like I tell them, they always tell me when I was doing housing coordination, are you the housing lady? Yes. Do you have vouchers? No.
Right.
It said, I would like to live in Stafford. I'm like, great. How much money you got? It says $1,000. I'm like, okay, let's sit down and look at rent, in Stanford. I'm like, do you see an apartment here with $1,000? They're like, nope. I'm like, okay, so let's see how much money, where does your money go? I'm like, how much money do we have for housing? $400. I said, can you afford to live in Stanford? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, so you need to go back to your case manager and find ways to make money and then come back and see me.
But you're doing the housing coordination, but that's really important, right?
But
Is that
part of the housing coordination was also to do case management and come up with realistic housing plans. So usually I'll be like, okay, I can house you in Stanford, but you need to give me something to work with. If you're coming at me $1,000 and the unit is $1,200, I'm not doing that because you're gonna end up homelessness. So that's not my job. So they hated my guts though. But I'm like,
people can have other options, right?
yeah.
They may have to either they increase their income or they get a room.
Yeah. So those are
Right?
the options because the first thing that they come, even with about rehousing, they don't want to talk about any other options until we have that conversation.
Yep.
And usually with the budgeting.
Yep.
They
But
don't
also
like it at first,
but also they need to know if they increase their income, they'll have more choices.
Yeah.
Right?
So Maggie, did you give them any options how to increase their income?
Yeah, so after that, so we're saying, okay, based on the budgeting, we're like, okay, if there's somebody is like, okay, based on the budgeting, I'm like, you have choices. Housing, these are the housing options. You can, choose to go back, live with your family where you can build up your income slowly and you can pay the $200 that you have left over to your family. Or if you don't want to live with your family, then let's look at other options. If you need to look, other roommates, then you need to increase your income. And we have employment services here at Inspirica. So they can even come to, if it was women's shelter, I said they have days when they come here where they'll meet with you here. You just have to have your case manager set up an appointment.
What kind of employment background did they have?
Good.
So
did they have an employment?
There are some people with good employment background, if including office. There are some with just hospitality. So we start with that. And then we also have, if they don't have a lot of skills, our employment services, we offer them these like some vocational programs that they can get to that, Inspirica does help pay for it. So there's if they where just a home health aide before, they can take a CNA course, or they can add phlebotomy. So it depends each person what they have, but we have to start with that assessment.
Stanford used to be a employment hotbed. Is this still like that, or has it changed?
It still is. It's just that you just have to sit down and make a lot of phone calls.
And you know what, Frederick, what you said and what Maggie said, it has to be based on the skills that they have. I think employment programs work if they're based on the skills that people have and people offer them skills to get ahead. But people have got to start somewhere and have got to have some sort of successful history of employment, even if it's not long-term. If they have a successful history of employment, you get an idea about what they can do, and then you can build on that.
What we used to have like a long time ago, when Fairway first opened here, they're no longer here. We had a relationship with them. So if we had people who haven't worked in a while, we made arrangements with Fairway. They go through the employment process, and then they work there for a while to gain experience if they didn't have any experience at all. So having relationships with some employers in the community and making sure that you work with them and you let them know what kind of clients you have, it's a start.
What about the temp agencies? Are they still big or no?
Yes.
Yes.
They are?
Yeah. And we
So
had
let me-
a relationship with I think it was Labor Ready at one point here in Stanford, and I think there was one in Norwalk. I'm not sure. It used to be on Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
walked in there and they gave me a job right there. Oh,
Good.
sorry.
No, that's really important. So let me pick up on what Maggie's saying, right? And what Frederick's getting at. Temp agencies, having a relationship with an employer where people can be hired immediately. Having experience doing some work is really important because people get money. If I had my druthers, my next program would be an employment program called $50 a week. It's a way to get people started, right? And once people get that check, it affects them. You see how they're going to use it. Does everybody use it wisely? God, no. But you know what? We're going to try to get people employment immediately, or we're going to base it on past employment. And I think that's the secret of employment. Take it from me. I ran the least successful employment program in New York City.
Wow.
I did. It was awful.
I was
But you
going
know
to say
what?
I wanted to invest with you, but since you said that, never mind.
Well, we
Can
finally,
you tell the Ben and Jerry story? It's my favorite.
which
So what
one?
not to do.
Oh, God. So that, I mean, we tried a bunch of different things. And it, some of them worked and some of them didn't, but you know what? We finally figured it out, and we connected the employment to the income, to the housing, to the goal plan. And we also used a lot of immediate employment, and temp agencies can be really good. I mean, people can go to Home Depot and pick up a job where they rake leads at somebody's house, right? You can try, like Maggie mentioned, home health care. That's an employment, and they have a 6-week training program, but they guarantee employment after that. Those are the ones that I've seen work, where people have actual job experience and actually get a paycheck, right? And that it's not, and people can work around, right? If they're motivated to get the paycheck, then they're motivated to get more money. And that's where the employment programs can be really helpful in helping people get better jobs, like getting them a CNA course if they're working as a home health aide. So we can work on that, but we got to get people working. Does that make sense to people?
I had one person who refused to work, and I worked them from shelter. And when I transitioned my position to housing coordination, and I'm still working with her right now. I can't get rid of her for years. It's been years. But when we first started, she said she couldn't work. She had mental health. She had all this stuff. And I'm like, and she wanted to apply for Social Security disability and she kept being denied. So I had a conversation with her. I'm like, look, you have to show them, because I said the Social Security office or people that are they haven't seen any evidence of you not being able to work. And the doctor cannot, in their good conscience, write a letter to say you're unable to work because you haven't shown that you're unable to work. So I'm like, why don't we start with this? And I promise you that if it doesn't work, if you show up, if you like last the job, maybe have 6 jobs in 6 months, that will tell them that maybe you can't work. But only if you do that is maybe they can approve you for Social Security, because then it'll show that you can't hold a job. You've had 6 jobs. So we started with that. And she worked for 2 years before her health, started deteriorating. And she had a good job. She worked for Ableist, and she started from 20 to 40 hours a week. But then her health got into it, and then she was able to get the Social Security disability, but only after I convinced her. I'm like, let's start with that. But it also depends on how much time you want to invest, and I had enough time but sometimes nowadays we don't have a lot of that time to invest in a person.
But it's important, and that's why it's important to be part of the plan, is you always have a backup. Is if people, okay, you can't work, you're going to try this, you're going to get some money. That's the worst thing that can happen. And if this doesn't work and you want to apply for benefits, how do you apply for benefits? And one of the things you've got to prove to them is you can't work. So how can you best do that? So she was actually following through on applying for benefits and making the Social Security determination. And she liked the work. That's really important. Does that make sense to people? No? Okay. You also want to clarify what you can offer and what you can't offer. You want to talk about the expectations of tenancy. You want to talk about maintaining an apartment. You want to talk about rent payment. You want to talk about what people do with their time. You also want to clarify that rapid rehousing is a short-term program. There's a limited subsidy, and the goal of it is people increase their income to the point where they can sustain themselves in the community, whether it be a room or a shared apartment or their own apartment. And we also want to connect people to resources that will help them maintain that place in the community. We want to talk about processes. I also want to talk to you guys about SSI. If people's plan is to get SSI, most people, even with SOAR, it takes at least a year. How long is your subsidy? At max, a year. So that even if they're applying for SSI, they've got to have a backup plan in order to maintain themselves in the community. Right?
I'm sorry. I know one thing you said about, the emphasizing the short term. Sometimes it's, a good thing. Sometimes some things go in the dark, because you'll have a client say, you know what, you're trying to set me up for failure. How am I going to be able to bring up all the negatives, which is usually because of fear, They think that they're going to fail. But that is usually because they're comfortable with not working. They made that decision 20 years ago. They're not going to work. They want to go on SSI, and it shows you like, hey, you haven't worked since you were 17 years old. You are now 59 years old. You're going to get maybe $900 from Social Security. The cost of housing is this right now, even just for a rental room. How are you going to live off of $900 and want your own apartment?
So how do we make a plan for that?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
But there are a couple of ways to make a plan for that, right? So they want to pursue the SSI. They need to understand what the timeline is with SSI, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so in the meantime, they get Saga cash, right? Because they have a disability that's been documented, right? And so they could maybe get Saga cash, right?
Yes, if they have like a dependent.
No, not even without a dependent.
Oh, if they're disabled, you're saying? Yeah,
Yes.
they get like what, $200, 200 and some change?
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
So you say, okay, so this is the process for this part of time, you're gonna have $200, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So how are you going to, so let's talk about what are your options?
Mhm.
So what are their options?
Increase their income while they get work on and increasing their income, employment, whether it's training or skills. They
Yeah.
have to be willing to be engaged.
Right, but they're not all gonna go to employment, right?
Mhm.
So what do? We try to get people on the Section 8 list, right?
Yes, that we
Explain-
always try to do. Yeah.
We explain the timeline in the Section 8 list. This is 5 to 10 years, right? So what else can people do with $200 a month?
Wait, Section 8 is 5 to 10 years?
I don't know. In New York, it is. What is it there?
You can be on it for the rest of your life.
Okay.
And that's what they'll tell you. They like, I need Section 8, I need a voucher. Like in Norwalk, I don't know how it is in your areas, but in Norwalk, the stipulation coming from Bridgeport to Stamford, they believe if you come to the shelter, you're going to get a Section 8 voucher automatically.
No, I
That is
understand
the
what
state of
people
mind.
believe, but what we're talking about is sort of talking to people about this, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
what we
understood.
want to do is help them apply for, if the list is open. We also want to look at lists in other places. Are there other places where they could move? Right? Do you guys know where the lists are open?
Yes, we get updates on that all the time.
Good.
Mhm.
So we want to say, you could live in Bridgeport, right? I know Bridgeport's list was open recently. There are other places in Connecticut that their lists may be open and we can fill out applications there. But that this is likely a long wait. So the SSI is at least a year. And if you have to appeal it, it could be 2 or 3 years. And then we got you on the Section 8 list, right? So, and this is how long it takes. Right?
And just,
Yep.
oh, I was just gonna say, Andrea, so, and if you don't have children and you're applying for SAGA, you have to prove that you've applied for Social Security
Right.
or disability.
Right.
Or it's a one-time thing if you can prove you're looking for employment or you're going for education. Same thing with the
Okay.
food stamps now, because in Connecticut, everything's back to pre-COVID.
Yep.
So
if they've applied,
the
but if they've applied,
requirements,
Yep.
sorry, so
So
the
that's important.
requirements are strict, yeah.
I want to say that's not what DSS says, right? That's not what they say on their website, but that's true. That's the reality. But if she's started the SSI application, she's going to apply for Saga Cash, and you use the information that you get here, right? And say, this is how you do it. You got to have a doctor's note. You got to, prove that you've applied for disability, but it's still $200. How are you going to make that up? Is there a friend or family you can live with? Right? It's the alternate housing discussion. Are there rooms? Probably not for $200, right? What are your other options to increase your income? It doesn't have to be employment, but it has to be something. Those are the conversations we have to have with people, right? Will we help them apply for Saga Cash? Sure. But you know what? It's $200. So what's the next step? And what's the disparity between what they want and what they can get? Right? And the truth is, everybody says, I know you have vouchers, and you say you don't have vouchers. Well, my Uncle Joe got a voucher. Find out from your Uncle Joe how he got the voucher, right? It's not about saying this is not true, right? Because people believe this is true. It's about saying, I don't have access to vouchers.
Yes. Mhm.
Let's talk about how you're going to get that voucher. And that's perfectly fine to talk about, right? Is that how are they going to get it?
Yeah, I feel Kathy's frustration too, in the other sense that
Yeah,
I've got young people
who want
that
vouchers.
can work. But unfortunately, they come from a background where they're, just
Correct.
really difficult family backgrounds.
And
They're
multi-generational poverty.
right, and they're having fun, like this
And
is
their
an
expectations are
individual,
low.
right? And this is individual is the one who said, he works minimum wage, but he will also lose his job. It's over, somebody else's fault. But I also know I've picked him up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he smells like alcohol from the night before. So, and he's like, when can I get a voucher? And I said, to be honest with you, go get another job. Like, and at this point, and I finally, got him a voucher, but part of me is like, I don't know. This is a young.
All right.
Just want to say something. I'm sorry. I don't want you guys to think that I am frustrated with the program. I actually hated rapid rehousing. And when they gave me this assigned to my role, I was pulling my hair, looking for other jobs and saying, no, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But the more and more I work with with the individuals, the more and more I come across people from different cases. I would say maybe about 5% of the people that I worked with in rapid rehousing really, really had a goal and really, really executed with our assistance. But, so what I learned from this now is rapid rehousing is an amazing program. The issue that comes at play is that we as workers, because we're passionate about our position, we're passionate about helping individuals and changing individuals' lives, we end up sometimes carrying the burden. Oh my gosh, I wasn't able to house this person.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because of their barrier, I have to house them in a horrible area, So I really learned that it's not so much the program, it's how we perceive the outcome of the program. Because at the end of the day, it's the client's responsibility to want to be housed and maintain housing. So we can't take off that, burden.
That's true.
Yeah, and I don't think you're complaining about the program, Kathy, but I do understand the frustration of doing this and sometimes working with our population.
Yeah.
And the thing that scares me the most is even when they have a voucher, there's time when I get them that voucher, because of their needs, I still feel like I'm setting them up to fail, or like I'm going to see them on the can once again because they've lost their housing. Because sometimes I feel like there's almost a higher level of care that they need, but we can't provide.
Amen, Liz. Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? That's a different story, right? What we're talking about here is how to help people increase their income. And I think that there has to be a path to supportive housing if people need that level of care. I don't think there's any question about that. And that's actually some of the things we're going to talk about next month. But in the meantime, people have to increase their income. But what we need to understand is we want to offer options as far as employment and benefits are concerned, but it may be in-kind resources. It may be things like applying for the voucher later. It may be alternate discussions of housing that's available, including shared housing, including living with family, those sorts of things. I think it's a shame that we only have those diversion conversations before people go into shelter. I think we need to have them as part of an income discussion. Right?
I actually do. I really explore that frequently with my clients, especially those that are struggling. And again, sometimes not to any fault of their own, a consistent income. Okay, let's look. Are there any other options? Have you met somebody at a new job that that you've developed a friendship with? Those types of things. Have
Do you have friends? Do you have family?
Right.
I mean, I don't think we explore, we talked about intergenerational poverty and people, especially young people, expecting that, they'll get a voucher because their parents had a voucher, right? If we're talking about intergenerational poverty, that parent can go back to the housing authority and ask for a bigger apartment because their family size has changed. It doesn't have to be limited by that. I think that we need to look at all options to increase the money that's coming in for people. Okay. So this discussion has gone further, but I want to just hit the big things that we talked about. And then I'm going to pick everything else up on the next one, right? Because it's the integration with the plan. Okay. Yes, they will be available for download. It's more than we got to.
If you go up to the top of the chat, they're in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So Liz, we may have to put it in again because if people came in a little late, they may not get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we need to do is educate people on the options to increase the income, all the options. And then we want to mentor and teach people to make the connections. We don't have to do it ourselves. We want to provide support through the process. We want to connect people to goals. And we want to try to maintain people's motivation. And the biggest motivation to increase your income is to want to stay in the community, right? So that means we really have got to work on that housing sustainability part. And we've got to really work on why people would prefer to live in an apartment and as opposed to the places they've lived before. We're always going to debrief their successes and we're going to build it on the successes that we saw and we're going to mark progress as people come through. So we're going to, and that was a beautiful example that Maggie did, is that people need direct access to jobs. It doesn't have to be their career goal. It's just having some experience holding a job and getting a paycheck is really important to people. And money is its own motivator, right? Even if they spend it in different ways, money is their own motivator. So we ask the person how much money they need to live on, and we make that the long-term goal. And that, we got to remember that the things that people have to do to get an income and get a job are awful. These interviews, doing these things online, getting a resume together, they're not fun and they're not motivating. So in order to maintain motivation, people have got to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Hey, Kathy, you talking to Frederick?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you on mute? You're not on mute. Oh, no, I'm not on mute.
You're not
Sorry.
on mute. What were you saying?
Well, I wasn't saying it, but yes, I do want to comment. I will share that because it is true. A lot of the times we get clients that are okay with returning to homelessness.
Yep.
That's all right for them. There's this woman though, when he said that, that's what jogged my memory. There's this woman that went viral on YouTube. And her thing is she's saying, she's cursing out the public because she's saying, you guys are haters. Yeah, I'm mad because I'm on welfare and I got rental assistance. That sucks for you guys because I get to enjoy my life while you guys are working for somebody. You got to answer to somebody. Don't hate me. Just continue paying your taxes. Thank you. And that's her video. And it went viral. And it went viral because that mentality is like rampant. It's
okay.
and illness.
All right. Well, what's she good at? What's she good at?
Making YouTube videos.
Okay. Can you make money from YouTube videos?
After 1 million views, you surely can.
Okay. So maybe that's her goal. Maybe that's her goal. Maybe that's something she's really good at, right? She's also really good at getting a reaction from people. Because I bet that would have set my hair on fire, a video like that, right?
Oh my gosh.
So what
That
else?
you
So what
did.
else can she do? What else can she do? Right? She's good at getting a reaction to people. She's good at making YouTube videos. What else is she good at? She can work a system, right? She can
Working the
work a
system. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and that's another thing. So you have like I have one client and because with COVID gave a
Kathy,
lot of
let's
money for
finish up
people.
this one.
Oh,
Let's
sorry.
finish up this one.
Next one,
So-
next meeting.
They're good about making YouTube videos. They're good about getting a reaction from people. She's also good about getting a system. Maybe there are other systems she can work. You're so good at working a system. I wonder why you haven't approached the PHA,
What is PHA?
Public Housing Authority.
Oh, authority. I'm sorry.
So we're going to give her, we're going to wind her up in other things. I know this is your time and I'm sorry we didn't get this. This we covered. Look at their job history. Try the job places, right? Connect with temp jobs, landscaping. Invite former residents back to talk about jobs. Sometimes they'll say things like, oh my God, if Don got a job, I can get a job. That's a joke, John. Don. So, you want to do past job opportunities. You want to put up a job board. You want to environmentalize the increasing income. Okay. If you can have people come in, I know that you guys have people scattered all the place, but if they come into the office, if you can have DSS come in, do a group of those applications, have somebody from SOAR come in, explain the SSI process, that can sometimes be helpful. You want to environmentalize it and you want to make sure that people, some people say that they're happy to go back to a shelter, but I have never met anybody who can't identify positives of being in the community and outside of a shelter, right? Never. So we want to really spend some time on that, about people getting equity in their housing. Does that make sense to people? Okay, I clearly crammed too much in this, but the discussion was great. I really appreciate everybody who talked. Thank you. And we'll go back to housing planning and I'll integrate some of the stuff I didn't cover in this one and that one. Does that make sense? Okay. So we are looking for positives and negatives that you guys have about employment programs. I know Maggie has some stuff and we'd love to hear it. Okay, so I'm going to let everybody go. Thank you. We appreciate all your work and we'll see you in a month.
Thank you.
We are doing case conferencing. So you'll be getting reminders. We do case conferencing with you guys every month. You don't have to come, but if you want to follow up on this, you're more than welcome to come and we'll talk about increasing income. Does that make sense? So you're welcome to come. Don's like, oh, great.